5. Compensate good thinkers and collaborators well. Successful organizations practice shared thinking. If you lead an organization, department, or team, then you can't afford to be without people who are good at shared thinking. As you recruit and hire, look for good thinkers who value others, have experience with the collaborative process, and are emotionally secure. Then, pay them well, and challenge them to use their thinking skills and share their ideas often. Nothing adds value like a lot of good thinkers putting their minds together. No matter what you're trying to accomplish, you can do it better with shared thinking. That is why I spent much of my life teaching leadership. Good leadership helps to put together the right people at the right time for the right purpose so that everybody wins. All it takes is the right people and a willingness to participate in shared thinking. Thinking question. Am I consistently including the heads of others to think over my head and achieve compounding results? Chapter 10. Practice unselfish thinking. We cannot hold a torch to light another's path without brightening our own. Ben Sweetland. So far in this book, we've discussed many kinds of thinking that can help you to achieve more. Each of them has the potential to make you more successful. Now I want to acquaint you with a kind of thinking with the potential to change your life in another way. It might even redefine how you view success. Unselfish thinking can often deliver a return greater than any other kind of thinking. Take a look at some of its benefits. 1. Unselfish thinking brings personal fulfillment. Few things in life bring greater personal rewards than helping others. Charles H. Burr believed, "Getters generally don't get happiness. Givers get it." Helping people brings great satisfaction. When you spend your day unselfishly serving others, at night you can lay down your head with no regrets and sleep soundly. In Bringing Out the Best in People, Alan Loy McGuinness remarked, "There is no more noble occupation in the world than to assist another human being, to help someone succeed." Even if you have spent much of your life pursuing selfish gain, it's never too late to have a change of heart. Even the most miserable person, like Charles Dickens' Scrooge, can turn his life around and make a difference for others. That's what Alfred Nobel did. When he saw his own obituary in the newspaper, his brother had died, and the editor had written about the wrong Nobel, saying that the explosives his company produced had killed many people. Nobel vowed to promote peace and acknowledge contributions to humanity. That is how the Nobel Prizes came into being. 2. Unselfish thinking adds value to others. In 1904, Bessie Anderson Stanley wrote the following definition of success in Brown Book magazine. "He has achieved success who has lived well, laughed often, and loved much, who has enjoyed the trust of pure women, the respect of intelligent men, and the love of little children, who has filled his niche and accomplished his task, who has left the world better than he found it, whether by an improved copy, a perfect poem, or a rescued soul, who has never lacked appreciation of earth's beauty or failed to express it, who has always looked for the best in others and given them the best he had, whose life was an inspiration, whose memory a benediction." When you get outside of yourself and make a contribution to others, you really begin to live. 3. Unselfish thinking encourages other virtues. When you see a 4-year-old, you expect to observe selfishness. But when you see it in a 40-year-old, it's not very attractive, is it? Of all the qualities a person can pursue, unselfish thinking seems to make the biggest difference toward cultivating other virtues. I think that's because the ability to give unselfishly is so difficult. It goes against the grain of human nature. But if you can learn to think unselfishly and become a giver, then it becomes easier to develop many other virtues: gratitude, love, respect, patience, discipline, etc. 4. Unselfish thinking increases quality of life. The spirit of generosity created by unselfish thinking gives people an appreciation for life and an understanding of its higher values. Seeing those in need and giving to meet that need puts a lot of things into perspective. It increases the quality of life of the giver and the receiver. That's why I believe that there is no life as empty as the self-centered life. There is no life as centered as the self-empty life. If you want to improve your world, then focus your attention on helping others. 5. Unselfish thinking makes you part of something greater than yourself. Merck & Company, the global pharmaceutical corporation, has always seen itself as doing more than just producing products and making a profit. It desires to serve humanity. In the mid-1980s, the company developed a drug to cure river blindness, a disease that infects and causes blindness in millions of people, particularly in developing countries. While it was a good product, potential customers couldn't afford to buy it. So what did Merck do? It developed the drug anyway, and in 1987 announced that it would give the medicine free to anyone who needed it. As of 1998, the company had given more than 250 million tablets away. George W. Merck says, "We try never to forget that medicine is for the people. It is not for the profits. The profits follow, and if we have remembered that, they have never failed to appear." The lesson to be learned? Simple. Instead of trying to be great, be part of something greater than yourself. 6. Unselfish thinking creates a legacy. Jack Balasek, President and Chief Operating Officer of True North Communications, says, "Learn, earn, return. These are the 3 phases of life. The first third should be devoted to education. The second third to building a career and making a living. And the last third to giving back to others, returning something in gratitude. Each state seems to be a preparation for the next one. If you are successful, it becomes possible for you to leave an inheritance for others. But if you desire to do more, to create a legacy, then you need to leave that in others. When you think unselfishly and invest in others, you gain the opportunity to create a legacy that will outlive you. How to experience the satisfaction of unselfish thinking. I think most people recognize the value of unselfish thinking, and most would even agree that it's an ability they would like to develop. Many people, however, are at a loss concerning how to change their thinking. To begin cultivating the ability to think unselfishly, I recommend that you do the following. 1. Put others first. The process begins with realizing that everything is not about you. That requires humility and a shift in focus. In The Power of Ethical Management, Ken Blanchard and Norman Vincent Peale wrote, "People with humility don't think less of themselves. They just think of themselves less." If you want to become less selfish in your thinking, then you need to stop thinking about your wants and begin focusing on others' needs. Paul the Apostle exhorted, Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit, but in humility consider others better than yourselves. Each of you should look not only to your own interests, but also to the interests of others. Make a mental and emotional commitment to look out for the interests of others. 2. Expose yourself to situations where people have needs. It's one thing to believe you are willing to give unselfishly. It's another to actually do it. To make the transition, you need to put yourself in a position where you can see people's needs and do something about it. The kind of giving you do isn't important at first. You can serve at your church, make donations to a food bank, volunteer professional services, or give to a charitable organization. The point is to learn how to give and to cultivate the habit of thinking like a giver. 3. Give quietly or anonymously. Once you have learned to give of yourself, then the next step is to learn to give when you cannot receive anything in return. It's almost always easier to give when you receive recognition for it than it is when no one is likely to know about it. The people who give in order to receive a lot of fanfare, however, have already received any reward they will get. There are spiritual, mental, and emotional benefits that come only to those who give anonymously. If you've never done it before, try it. 4. Invest in people intentionally. The highest level of unselfish thinking comes when you give of yourself to another person for that person's personal development or well-being. If you're married or a parent, you know this from personal experience. What does your spouse value most highly? Money in the bank or your time freely given? What would small children really rather have from you? A toy or your undivided attention? The people who love you would rather have you than what you can give them. If you want to become the kind of person who invests in people, then consider others and their journey so that you can collaborate with them. Each relationship is like a partnership created for mutual benefit. As you go into any relationship, think about how you can invest in the other person so that it becomes a win-win situation. Here is how relationships most often play out. I win, you lose, I win only once. You win, I lose, you win only once. We both win, we win many times. We both lose, goodbye partnership. The best relationships are win-win. Why don't more people go into relationships with that attitude? I'll tell you why. Most people want to make sure that they win first. Unselfish thinkers, on the other hand, go into a relationship and make sure that the other person wins first. And that makes all the difference. 5. Continually check your motives. François de la Rochefoucauld said, "What seems to be generosity is often no more than disguised ambition, which overlooks a small interest in order to secure a great one." The hardest thing for most people is fighting their natural tendency to put themselves first. That's why it's important to continually examine your motives to make sure you're not sliding backward into selfishness. Do you want to check your motives? Then follow the modeling of Benjamin Franklin. Every day, he asked himself 2 questions. When he got up in the morning, he would ask, "What good am I going to do today?" And before he went to bed, he would ask, "What good have I done today?" If you can answer those questions with selflessness and integrity, you can keep yourself on track. Give while you live. In the fall of 2001, we all witnessed a demonstration of unselfish thinking unlike anything we had seen in the United States for many years. Who can forget the events of September 11th, 2001? I had just finished teaching a leadership lesson when my assistant Linda Eggers came into the studio to announce the tragic news. Like most Americans, I remained riveted to the television all day and heard the reports of the firefighters and police officers who raced into the World Trade Center towers to help others, never worrying about their own safety. In the days following the tragedy, millions of Americans expressed a great desire to do something that would help the situation. I had the same desire. InJoy was scheduled to do a training via simulcast on September 15th, the Saturday following the tragedy. Our leadership team decided to add a 1.5-hour program titled America Prays to the end of the simulcast. In it, my friend Max Lucado wrote and read a prayer, expressing the heart's cry of millions. Franklin Graham prayed for our national leaders. Jim and Shirley Dobson gave advice to parents on how to help their children deal with the event. And Bruce Wilkinson and I asked the simulcast viewers to give financially to the people injured on September 11th. Amazingly, they gave $5.9 million, which World Vision graciously agreed to distribute to those in need. Unselfish thinking and giving turned a very dark hour into one of light and hope. Less than 2 weeks after the tragedy, I was able to travel to Ground Zero in New York City. I went to view the site of the destruction, to thank the men and women clearing away the wreckage, and to pray for them. I can't really do justice to what I saw. I've traveled to New York dozens of times. It's one of my favorite places in the world. My wife and I had been up in the towers with our children many times before and have wonderful memories of that area. To look at the place where the buildings had once stood and to see nothing but rubble, dust, and twisted metal, it's simply indescribable. What many Americans didn't realize is that for many months, people worked diligently to clean up the site. Many were New York City firefighters and other city workers. Others were volunteers. They worked around the clock, 7 days a week. And when they came across the remains of someone in the rubble, they called for silence and reverently carried them out. Since I am a clergyman, I was asked to wear a clerical collar upon entering the area. As I walked around, many workers saw the collar and asked me to pray for them. It was a humbling privilege. American educator Horace Mann said, "Be ashamed to die until you have won some victory for humanity." According to this standard, New York City's firefighters are certainly prepared for death. The service they perform is often truly heroic. You and I may never be required to lay down our lives for others as they did. But we can give to others in different ways. We can be unselfish thinkers who put others first and add value to their lives. We can work with them so that they go farther than they thought possible. Thinking question. Am I continually considering others and their journey in order to think with maximum collaboration? Chapter 11. Rely on bottom-line thinking. There ain't no rules around here. We're trying to accomplish something. Thomas Edison, inventor. How do you figure out the bottom line for your organization, business, department, team, or group? In many businesses, the bottom line is literally the bottom line. Profit determines whether you are succeeding. But dollars should not always be the primary measure of success. Would you measure the ultimate success of your family by how much money you had at the end of the month or year? And if you run a non-profit or volunteer organization, how would you know whether you were performing at your highest potential? How do you think bottom line in that situation? A non-profit's bottom line. Frances Hesselbein had to ask herself exactly that question in 1976, when she became the National Executive Director of the Girl Scouts of America. When she first got involved with the Girl Scouts, running the organization was the last thing she expected. She and her husband John were partners in Hesselbein Studios, a small family business that filmed television commercials and promotional films. She wrote the scripts, and he made the films. In the early 1950s, she was recruited as a volunteer troop leader at the Second Presbyterian Church in Johnstown, Pennsylvania. Even that was unusual, since she had a son and no daughters. But she agreed to do it on a temporary basis. She must have loved it, because she led the troop for 9 years. In time, she became council president and a member of the national board. Then she served as executive director of the Tallis Rock Girl Scout Council, a full-time paid position. By the time she took the job as CEO of the national organization, the Girl Scouts was in trouble. The organization lacked direction. Teenage girls were losing interest in scouting, and it was becoming increasingly difficult to recruit adult volunteers, especially with greater numbers of women entering the workforce. Meanwhile, the Boy Scouts was considering opening itself to girls. Hesselbein desperately needed to bring the organization back to the bottom line. We kept asking ourselves very simple questions, she says. What is our business? Who is our customer? And what does the customer consider value? If you're the Girl Scouts, IBM, or AT&T, you have to manage for a mission. Hesselbein's focus on mission enabled her to identify the Girl Scouts' bottom line. We really are here for one reason: to help a girl reach her highest potential. More than any one thing, that made the difference. Because when you are clear about your mission, corporate goals and operating objectives flow from it. Once she figured out her bottom line, she was able to create a strategy to try to achieve it. She started by reorganizing the national staff. Then she created a planning system to be used by each of the 350 regional councils. And she introduced management training to the organization. Hesselbein didn't restrict herself to changes in leadership and organization. In the 1960s and 70s, the country had changed, and so had its girls. But the Girl Scouts hadn't. Hesselbein tackled that issue too. The organization made its activities more relevant to the current culture, giving greater opportunities for use of computers, for example, rather than hosting a party. She also sought out minority participation, created bilingual materials, and reached out to low-income households. If helping girls reach their highest potential was the group's bottom line, then why not be more aggressive helping girls who traditionally have fewer opportunities? The strategy worked beautifully. Minority participation in the Girl Scouts tripled. In 1990, Hesselbein left the Girl Scouts after making it a first-class organization. She went on to become the founding president and CEO of the Peter F. Drucker Foundation for Nonprofit Management, and now serves as chairman of its board of governors. And in 1998, she was awarded the Presidential Medal of Freedom. President Clinton said of Hesselbein during the ceremony at the White House, "She has shared her remarkable recipe for inclusion and excellence with countless organizations, whose bottom line is measured not in dollars, but in changed lives." He couldn't have said it better. Why you should enjoy the return of bottom-line thinking. If you are accustomed to thinking of the bottom line only as it relates to financial matters, then you may be missing some things crucial to you and your organization. Instead, think of the bottom line as the end, the takeaway, the desired result. Every activity has its own unique bottom line. If you have a job, your work has a bottom line. If you serve in your church, your activity has a bottom line. So does your effort as a parent or spouse, if you are one. As you explore the concept of bottom-line thinking, recognize that it can help you in many ways. 1. Bottom-line thinking provides great clarity. What's the difference between bowling and work? When bowling, it takes only 3 seconds to know how you've done. That's one reason people love sports so much. There's no waiting and no guessing about the outcome. Bottom-line thinking makes it possible for you to measure outcomes more quickly and easily. It gives you a benchmark by which to measure activity. It can be used as a focused way of ensuring that all your little activities are purposeful and line up to achieve a larger goal. 2. Bottom-line thinking helps you assess every situation. When you know your bottom line, it becomes much easier to know how you're doing in any given area. When Frances Hesselbein began running the Girl Scouts, for example, she measured everything against the organization's goal of helping a girl reach her highest potential. From the organization's management structure, which she changed from a hierarchy to a hub, down to what badges the girls could earn. There's no better measurement tool than the bottom line. 3. Bottom-line thinking helps you make the best decisions. Decisions become much easier when you know your bottom line. When the Girl Scouts were struggling in the 1970s, outside organizations tried to convince its members to become women's rights activists or door-to-door canvassers. But under Hesselbein, it became easy for the Girl Scouts to say no. It knew its bottom line, and it wanted to pursue its goals with focus and fervency. 4. Bottom-line thinking generates high morale. When you know the bottom line and you go after it, you greatly increase your odds of winning. And nothing generates high morale like winning. How do you describe sports teams that win the championship? Or company divisions that achieve their goals? Or volunteers who achieve their mission? They're excited. Hitting the target feels exhilarating, and you can hit it only if you know what it is. 5. Bottom-line thinking ensures your future. If you want to be successful tomorrow, you need to think bottom line today. That's what Frances Hesselbein did, and she turned the Girl Scouts around. Look at any successful, lasting company, and you'll find leaders who know their bottom line. They make their decisions, allocate their resources, hire their people, and structure their organization to achieve that bottom line. How to enjoy the return of bottom-line thinking. It isn't hard to see the value of the bottom line. Most people would agree that bottom-line thinking has a high return. But learning how to be a bottom-line thinker can be challenging. 1. Identify the real bottom line. The process of bottom-line thinking begins with knowing what you're really going after. It can be as lofty as the big-picture vision, mission, or purpose of an organization. Or it can be as focused as what you want to accomplish on a particular project. What's important is that you be as specific as possible. If your goal is for something as vague as success, you will have a painfully difficult time trying to harness bottom-line thinking to achieve it. The first step is to set aside your wants. Get to the results you're really looking for, the true essence of the goal. Set aside any emotions that may cloud your judgment and remove any politics that may influence your perception. What are you really trying to achieve? When you strip away all the things that don't really matter, what are you compelled to achieve? What must occur? What is acceptable? That is the real bottom line. 2. Make the bottom line the point. Have you ever been in a conversation with someone whose intention seemed other than stated? Sometimes the situation reflects intentional deception, but it can also occur when the person doesn't know his own bottom line. The same thing happens in companies. Sometimes, for example, an idealistically stated mission and the real bottom line don't jibe. Purpose and profits compete. Earlier, I quoted George W. Merck, who stated, "We try never to forget that medicine is for the people. It is not for the profits. The profits follow, and if we have remembered that, they have never failed to appear." He probably made that statement to remind those in his organization that profits serve purpose. They don't compete with it. If making a profit were the real bottom line, and helping people merely provided the means for achieving it, then the company would suffer. Its attention would be divided, and it would neither help people as well as it could, nor make as much profit as it desired. 3. Create a strategic plan to achieve the bottom line. Bottom line thinking achieves results. Therefore, it naturally follows that any plans that flow out of such thinking must tie directly to the bottom line. And there can be only one, not two or three. Once the bottom line has been determined, a strategy must be created to achieve it. In organizations, that often means identifying the core elements or functions that must operate properly to achieve the bottom line. This is the leader's responsibility. The important thing is that when the bottom line of each activity is achieved, then the bottom line is achieved. If the sum of the smaller goals doesn't add up to the real bottom line, then either your strategy is flawed or you've not identified your real bottom line. 4. Align team members with the bottom line. Once you have your strategy in place, make sure your people line up with your strategy. Ideally, all team members should know the big goal as well as their individual role in achieving it. They need to know their personal bottom line and how that works to achieve the organization's bottom line. 5. Stick with one system and monitor results continually. Dave Sutherland, the president of one of my companies, ISS, believes that some organizations get into trouble by trying to mix systems. He maintains that many kinds of systems can be successful, but mixing different systems or continually changing from one to another leads to failure. Dave says, "Bottom line thinking cannot be a one-time thing. It has to be built into the system of working and relating and achieving. You can't just tune into the desired result every now and then. Achieving with bottom line thinking must be a way of life, or it will send conflicting messages. I am a bottom line thinker. It is part of my system for achievement. I practice it every day. No other measurements, no wasted efforts." Dave calls members of his field team every night to ask the bottom line question they expect to hear. He continually keeps his eye on the company's bottom line by monitoring it for every core area. When it comes right down to it, regardless of your bottom line, you can improve it with good thinking. And bottom line thinking has a great return because it helps to turn your ideas into results. Like no other kind of mental processing, it can help you to reap the full potential of your thinking and achieve whatever you desire. Thinking question. Am I staying focused on the bottom line so that I can gain the maximum return